And good morning, beautiful people. Oh, hey, you know what? I see that you guys are amazing. I just want to say thank you for being just the coolest people ever in the world. And you guys are such, I'm just effusing with your singing your praise this morning. You guys are amazing. Daryl Davis, thank you so much, man. Ronald Colson, you're awesome. Such a great friend. David Rife, man, you're amazing. Let's see, Andrea, Melanie Moran, let me not forget you. And of course, Dawn, informally hip, you're awesome. Flaticord Music, Michelle Waldo, Mama Lungs, and Lung Yub, Jenny Spark. You guys are just the most amazing. Nemo, Fluttership Bear, Fox Bear, you guys are just awesome. And you keep lifting me up in prayer, and I so appreciate it. Boy, I can really tell this last week. You guys have been just really knocked it out of the park, and thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. If you haven't yet made it over to Rockfin, you should. I'm not trying to twist your arm and get any of your money or anything, but every morning at 4:20 on the West Coast. Yes, I chose that on purpose. Every morning at 4:20 on the West Coast, Freaky Freaks. I'm going to call it the Socratic method. Join in just a few minutes of spending some time with some tuning forks and some meditation and each other. So join every day at Rockfin Premium, only right there, 4:20 a.m. You can, of course, catch it later. But if you want to join it live, you can do so then. All right, our quote of the day comes from Aristotle. The energy of the mind is the essence of life. So there you go. Today, I hope we don't bore you. It would be a travesty if we were to do so. I haven't asked a couple of my dearest friends in this community, Cami Knodel and Zach Zabala, to join me. There's a couple of people that I just find, from the moment we began talking, just... again, such a beautiful friendship developed, and just such a great, I don't know, it's an indication of what we see in this community. Whenever you meet somebody for the first time, it's as though you've been friends forever. And it's so terrific to see. And I love these kids. Good morning. Cami, are you with us? Hello?
I am with you.
Yay. All right. And Zach, are you there? I think he's around somewhere. Okay, so what I wanted to do this morning is...
Yes, I'm here. So
hey, no, it's
I
all
was
right.
in chat.
No problem. I appreciate that. All right, so a couple of weeks ago, I had this crazy thought occurred to me, and it was based on some stuff that Cami and I have talked about before. I know Zach and I have talked about a little bit before, and I wanted to delve a little bit further into it. I just quickly presented the idea, and not in one of my regular... Well, it was an odd stream. I think I did it under sola scriptura or sort of scriptural, or maybe even ancient wisdom. I don't know. It had just hit me out of nowhere, and I thought, man, I got to get this out there while I'm thinking about it. And so I don't think it really, I don't know, hit as many people as it could at that point, just because it was not in the appropriate place. So I want to get your take on it, and I know that Zach, you have some ideas as well. So this again will come as no surprise to either of you, I think, in the conversations that we've had before. If you need some background, you can go all the way back to the episode called Even the Rocks Cry Out. And that's the first time that Cami and I talked on this program. And we got to know Cami a little bit better, as well as explored some of the nature of the world around us. Well, we're going to do a little bit more of that this morning, if you're okay with that. Okay, so I'm going to go all the way back. Let me see if I can go all the way back here to the beginning. This should be, let's see, I'm way in the wrong spot here. Somehow it started right in the middle. Okay, so I'm going to refresh you guys a little bit. And when I say you guys, that'd be the listening audience, because I know that Zach and Cami are all over this. I'm like a priest and a 9-year-old kid. Wait, did I just say that? I'm sorry. Oh dear. You want to? Hey,
I almost laughed.
at the risk of offending people, you want to hear my my favorite Protestant joke in the world?
Yes.
All right, it's my favorite Protestant joke in the world. Priest and a rabbi are walking down the street. Priest looks, a 9-year-old boy walks in front of him. Priest looks over at the rabbi and goes, "Boy, wouldn't you like to fuck him?" Rabbi goes, "Out of what?" Ouch. Okay, so that's why it's a Protestant joke, because we're slagging yeah, okay. Anyway, the jokes don't get any better. But
I love it.
They don't stop either. All right. So we're going to go all the way back in time to a guy named Clandy. And in the, I believe it was the 16th century. And what he discovered was that if you were to, well, let's do this, in fact. I'm going to do this instead. Sorry, back up a little bit. Let's do this. Okay, so I'm gonna use sound to demonstrate wave theory. I think it's something that you're all pretty familiar with, and a couple of things I want to familiarize you with here. One is that wave propagation works similarly in all media. Doesn't matter. There are a couple of different ways that can occur. They can be electromagnetic waves. They could be, which includes light and things like radio waves and electromagnetism, that sort of stuff. It can also be things like sound waves, and sound wave is different. It's a pressure wave. And it can also be longitudinal or transverse. We'll talk a little bit more about those. But generally, waves propagate very similarly. And this is one of the reasons why I'm a big proponent of multidisciplinary study. Because when you understand how it works in one media and you can put it into different media and see what's the same and what's different, you can learn a lot about the nature of the world around us. Well, wave propagation works very similarly in most media. And one of the things to be aware of is that this says sound requires a medium for propagation. I think you can just say waves require a media for propagation. If you were to think in terms of like a wave at the ocean, you certainly you can't have a wave without any water, right? So there has to be a media. So basically the definition of a wave is a perturbation, right, or a movement in a media. Right, so you introduce energy into some sort of media, and that energy gets moved, and the way that energy moves is called a wave. Okay, pretty basic stuff, right? So anything requires a media for propagation. The reason I bring this up is because, again, we're told that light is both a particle and a wave. They just use that to get around the fact that it needs a wave to propagate, right? So we'll touch back on that. But again, keep in mind that most of the things that we've been told by mainstream everything is a lie, whether that's history, science, you name it, religion. They've screwed us over and made things funky, and mostly misdescribed it. All right, so I'm going to just quickly go through. The sound requires a media for propagation. So again, how does sound travel? Well, it's a perturbation in the media. So what happens to the particles of the media? All right, so the object vibrates. That vibration then begins to, these are air molecules, we'll call them that for lack of a better term. I don't buy into yes, I do feel remarkably better right now. We're not out of the woods, but again, I want to just thank you guys so much for the prayers and positive energy, because I can tell that it's helping. Also, Rick Simpson oil, that helps. All right, so back to this. Object vibrates. That vibration then moves whatever air is. We'll just say it's the media, but it doesn't have to be air. It could be water. It could be steel. It could be wood. Sound travels through any of those media. In fact, it moves faster for different reasons, and I'll show you this. But when it vibrates, we're going to say that this is air, right? And so these molecules bounce into the next ones. They transfer their energy, and just like one of those, click-clack things of the the sort of pendulum thing that you see on your math teacher's desk. All right, so that's how it goes. It transfers energy from one, that energy gets transferred, they move out of the way, and then the other one moves back. And this process is called compression when they move together, and rarefaction when they move back. And so you can see this happening here. This energy now waves, and you can see that it travels in a period, right? So this is the same as this, is the same as this, is the same as this. And that period between here and here is what we call a cycle, a complete cycle of energy, right? Or a wave. That's a wave form, a complete cycle of energy. The number of times, the period, right, or the cycle, typically we refer to now as hertz or cycles per second. That's how many times does it occur per second. That's the frequency of the wave. A frequency is essentially how many times. How frequently do you get your hair cut? Well, for me, once a life now. How frequently do you mow the lawn? Once a week. Okay, that's the frequency of the lawn mowing. So the frequency of the sound is so many times per second. That's the way we measure it. Okay, so in this case, that is basically how a wave, in this case sound, travels. It is a pressure wave, right? In that it's created by pressure, and it's longitudinal. In other words, it's moving this way and not transverse or up and down. Most of the time, when you see a sound wave, it looks, like it's got that waveform. That's a transverse wave, but we just use it, we just represent it that way because it's easier to see. It would be very difficult to represent editing sound if you see it like this. There's my tuning fork as I use on early mornings, and it begins to vibrate, right? Begins to vibrate the air. Okay, so let's move back then to this premise. Come back here. All right, so a guy named Clandy in the 1500s discovered that if you put something like powder, sand is what he used, on a metal plate, and then he vibrated it with a violin bow, depending on the resonant frequency of the plate, right? So in other words, what frequency it vibrates at, these coherent patterns would appear at certain frequencies. And so these are called Clandy figures. Very tiny dreadlocks. Yeah. Yeah, wow. Microscopic. Yeah. All right. So these are actual.
I saw that.
These are actual Clandy figures. What you're viewing on the screen right now are called Clandy figures, and he drew a whole book of them out, right, and corresponded those to specific frequencies as best he could determine. So over time, they got somewhat more complex. We're adding a little color there. This is a very complex waveform, right? But essentially, what we see is that the frequency, the vibration of sound, begins to manifest itself as organized energy. And that's an important concept, right? And so then in the 1960s, we're going to fast forward to the 1960s, a guy named Dr. Hans Jenny, he began to take this a little bit further and use a variety of different media, not just a plate, right, but liquids and gels of all kinds of different things, and set up what he called a tonoscope, or something that he could introduce this sound and photograph or film these things using a variety of methods. And so he called this process cymatics, and that's the term I'm sure you've probably heard now, cymatics, or this process of visualizing sound, right, through a media. And that's what cymatics is, and it creates these just gorgeous images, and very fascinating as well. One of the very interesting things that we note about this, of course, is one of the differences. You probably heard the difference between 432 and 440, and that's, again, cycles per second. In concert tuning from the 1950s, a World Standards Organization set concert tuning at 440 hertz for the A, right below middle C. And that became concert pitch. But if you do the math, the natural occurrence of those frequencies occur at a lower pitch, it would be 432 hertz. And so what they did is they changed it. Now, one of the things that we note is that when you visualize those, a 440 hertz doesn't organize itself into this beautiful structure, whereas a 432 hertz does. In other words, the 440 hertz scale, the notes are still relative to one another in the same way, but they are off. In other words, they don't create these beautiful patterns. It creates incoherence. Yet the 432 does create these patterns. So again, was it done intentionally? You got to believe so. In fact, we see in many cases, for example, we've noted that I'm sure you see the similarity here to some of the rose windows used in Gothic cathedrals. What's more remarkable about that is that many of those in the Gothic cathedrals also resonate. They show the same pitch as the resonant frequency of the structure. And that is just remarkable. Same thing in some Indian temples from antiquity. We don't even know how old they are, that represent in mandalas, which again look very similar to these, the frequencies, the resonant frequencies in the building, or some of them represent a scale, right? Different pitches. It's mind-blowing. All right, I don't want to spend an awful lot of time on this, but I do want to get you familiar with the premise, right, of what's going on here. And then even these are called planet frequencies, planet, whatever, but they do vibrate at they have different frequencies that they vibrate at. And these are the frequencies of those different wandering stars, luminaries, visualized, right, with those frequencies. Even, in fact, and this is one of the very curious ones, if you take one of the Clandy figures, right, and using these different frequencies, what does it look like but a turtle? And then when we take the back of that turtle and do some other things, it also represents very, coincidentally enough, electromagnetic flux lines when you have a quadrupolar toroidal field. So, and if you've heard the legend that the Earth is supported on the back of a giant turtle, well, maybe there you go. All right. Well, here's another thing I want to introduce, which is the idea of that when these waves come into contact with each other, there's something called phase. And phase is the alignment, where they relate to one another, right? So if one, let's say, starts just a half a second before the other. They're going to be out of time with each other or out of phase with one another. And this causes some interesting things to occur. It causes the waveform to change somewhat. And depending on how those interact with each other, you can have additive or subtractive, constructive or destructive wave patterns. So in other words, sometimes when they hit at the right angle, they will add to each other. And if you get two waves of the same frequency hitting at the same time, they pulse, and so they amplify one another. If you get them exactly 180 degrees out of phase with one another, they'll cancel each other out so that the net result is of a flat line. They just completely create a node, and it dismisses each other. Otherwise, they change each other, and it does a variety of interesting different things. All right. So it is in mind with that. Of course, you can see this and how they overlap and impact one another. So I want to then correlate this and go back to this idea of interdisciplinary study, which is that, again, that's sound that we looked at really quickly. But one of the things that you can do exactly the same sort of wave propagation with is both electricity and magnetism. And in fact, one of the things that we understand now about electricity and magnetism is that they correlate to one another directly. There's a direct correlation between the two. In fact, they interact with one and each other in a one-to-one correlation. All right, and now we're looking at magnetic flux density here. What I really should have done, give me just a moment here. I think I had, that's what I remember now. I was doing that whenever Chrome crashed, and let's see.
Are we covering you good? Are we being good co-hosts?
Yeah, perfect.
This is pure magic. Keep talking.
You guys are doing great.
So right.
You guys are doing great. Okay, so I'll just do it quickly this way. Like this, so you can see. Okay, so this is how electricity and magnetism interact with one another. Is they actually work on the same axis, on the separate axis, right? But on a 45, the rule of right angles. And so if you take E for electricity in this image here, and it's going up and down, and that's the wave, magnetism, B, right, then moves in that direction. And so they're corollary to one another. All right. I think everybody should be with me so far. That's pretty simple to understand, but it took Planck forever to figure this out based on Maxwell's equations, right? So it was not immediately apparent, although using things like electromagnetism, right, that you can wrap, let's say, a copper wire around a nail, introduce electricity to it, and that creates a magnet. Conversely, and this is the interesting part, if you take that same nail and then introduce it into a coil, right, and then move it, you'll get electricity. Or if you introduce electricity, you'll get motion. So it's an inverse engine. They work directly in proportion to one another. This is exactly how a microphone and a speaker are directly proportional to one another. It's the same engine. It's just in reverse. A speaker takes energy and moves that energy, causes it to create movement in the air. A microphone takes the movement in the air and inversely turns it into electricity so that we can manipulate it. And so this is essentially what I want you to understand. This image right here is probably one of the key aspects of what I want to get into right now, because now I want to revert back to this premise here, right, that Nikola Tesla told us, right, that if you want to understand the nature of the universe, think in terms of frequency, vibration, right? And in fact, it was, believe it or not, Albert Einstein, which told us that matter is coherent energy. And so when we think of this idea of coherent energy, this is where I deviate from the periodic table of the elements, right, and the atomic model, is that from what I understand, based on not only this, but just a shit ton of other data, right, is that this is actually the nature of the universe, is that there is, and this is why it requires, there's a variety of reasons, but why it requires the ether, the luminiferous ether. You've heard us talk about it. Light needs a matter, a media, to propagate in, right? So this is why they created the idea of light as a particle and a wave, a photon, because space, right, it's supposed to be a vacuum, so there's nothing there for it to propagate through. They needed that, and that's why Einstein abolished the ether. But if you go back to Michelson-Morley, they clearly established that there is an ether, right? So this fifth element, right, the quintessence, has been firmly established since antiquity in terms of philosophy and science about how things are organized and put together. And the basic understanding is that matter, right, my desk, is organized energy. So energy in the ether, the ether is the material, the substance, the media of which it's made, and the energy organizes itself into a coherent pattern, and that makes up the thing. And then we have this other thing, right, what we would call, Rupert Sheldrake would call a morphic resonance, right, which tells it what to do. And we've not understood that. We don't understand consciousness. We don't understand thought. We don't understand this morphic resonance thing. And so I'm here to propose the idea, right, that perhaps there is, if we go back to this image here, and we take this axis, we'll call it the red axis, as the energy, right, in the ether, the etheric, which then becomes coherent matter. Right? That this then, so this is the material. This blue axis here becomes the immaterial, and that is the shadow self, if you will, the subtle body of the actual being, of the actual matter, so that every particle of matter, if you want to think in terms of particle, but all matter has its corresponding etheric body, if you will, and that would be the subtle body. It's corresponding on this axis, its shadow self, and that is corresponding in a one-to-one manner. In the same way, and this would explain, for example, how an amputee, they lose their leg, and yet they still have sensation in that leg to some degree. I think this would well explain this. And so this is what I am proposing, is that there is in this alternate axis, in the same way that electricity and magnetism correspond with one another in this one-to-one correspondence, that in the same way there is if you want to call it spiritual, if you want to call it etheric, if you want to call it subtle body, I don't care what you want to call it, but I think this is what I'm proposing. There is a one-to-one correspondence with the material, the matter, with the spiritual. And now I'm going to hand it over to my intrepid co-host and say, what do you think? Am I wackier than a sack of hammers?
So, go ahead, Cam.
No, go ahead, Zach.
I was just going to say this would mean that all matter has a frequency.
That's correct.
Its own wavelength.
That's the implication. I had gotten to that point before this alternate thing, right? But yes, that is how I replaced the table of elements, is that all matter has a corresponding frequency. And I think that can be demonstrated, again, just replacing atomic weight with frequency. And that you would use the same way that we would think of electrons in an sp and df suborbital, Zach. So instead of making a quantum leap, what are the things that the reason that they have these orbitals, right, is because there are specific points at which those jumps occur. It doesn't just happen completely dynamically along a continuum. There are points at which those occur, and those are the suborbitals, and it's what we call making a quantum leap. Well, the same thing occurs, what we see in the Clandy figures, is that those coherency patterns appear at particular frequencies. And so again, it's my proposition that matter appears at specific frequencies which are harmonic to one another, and in between is incoherence, right? But that we could do the same sort of predictions by using Avogadro's constant that we would use with making chemical predictions and interactions. We could do the same thing with these frequencies, and they would still have interaction in the same way that we would have waveform interactions with one another.
Okay, yeah.
This is how the Wright machine
Yes.
pinpoint certain things and not interfere with other ones.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Wow.
I mean, definitively, that is the implication at the outset, right? Is that matter is coherent energy. So matter becomes coherent waveform, and then and this is the other part of it, though. How does it know what to be? I think part of that is what Sheldrake calls again morphic resonance, and I think that is held on this other waveform, if you want to say that one's the radial and one's the axial, axis there, I would say it's on the alternate axis, is that's where the morphic resonance or the information is that defines that. So the one has the material aspects and the other has the energetic aspects, if you will, that tells us what that is. And this goes along with the idea of, polarity as well, that all things have a polarity positive and negative. As you can see again in these images, they would have this positive and negative, but also in a quadrupolar fashion, in the same way that we see the quadrupolar toroidal field creating this universe or this realm, in at least in the model that I see in my head.
No, you've got it exactly right. It's all interactive. It all works in the beginning. In the beginning was the word,
Yep.
and the word is, again, where you start to pick up sound is your base G, and it runs exactly your frequencies. It makes your harmonics. They definitely did their spell casting. I'm going back into your presentation.
Yep.
But they did their spell casting when they changed the frequencies. That was very, very intentional. Of course, they knew how it worked. You are right on the windows and the churches. I've been researching all of this in the background, and you're nailing it 1 for 2 for 3 for right in order. What you're saying is how you can explain piezoelectricity, how you can explain chemistry, how you can
Yes.
explain everything that works.
By
And
their,
it works.
by their interrelationships, right? Because we've not
By their interrelationships.
Yes, we've not been looking at the alternate axis of interrelationship. So we only see the one axis, and we look at it. We go, how do it go, right? The old
How do it go? And we try to separate it, and we try to create a monopole because that's the type of energy
Exactly.
we're getting when in ridiculous, it's completely absurd.
God, you're
We
fabulous.
look away from
Yeah. I love you, Cami. I love you. And this is okay. So, have you ever heard the
Oh,
old?
I love you more. This is
No.
so perfect.
Have you ever heard the old joke, right? About there's, they were college students were asked to write a paper, right, on which was the best invention, the greatest invention to affect mankind, and the one student came back with the wheel, right, and the other person said the computer chip or the transistor, and then the one student said the thermos, like the thermos. Yeah, it keep the hot stuff hot and the cold stuff cold. Yeah, how do it know? Okay, so
That is brilliant.
yeah, and I'm getting it right. So it's the same idea, right? Yes, and if you get the joke, you understand, right? That we're looking at the wrong thing. We're looking at only one aspect, and we can't explain the other aspects. How in the fuck does that work? Because we're only looking at one aspect, and we're not seeing the interrelated aspect, and that one directly affects the other. And this would again directly explain, if you will, magic, the energetic application of will to manifest itself into a physical reality, because they're directly connected. And so you push out on, and again, I think if you understood it better, instead of one direction, it'd be kind of the alternate direction, because you'd understood the nature of how it would come out. And this is where I mentioned before, like, okay, so add one more step to this, right? So take one more step if you want to talk about spell casting, right? So now take this and let's see. Hang on, I gotta do this real quick. Vortex. So vortex theory. So let me come over here. So now, if you were to take, so one of the things, right, is if it's difficult to manifest that, right, because you're going to have pushback because of the nature of polarity, right, so that there's always a counteraction. Well, what if you were to then take instead this vortex theory, right, and you begin to take that energy, and by taking those polarities and pushing them push-pull against one another and setting up various things against each other, right? Races, religions, sexes, that sort of thing. And you push-pull against one another. They're always across from one another, but it creates this vortex motion. Once you do that, right, what is the property of a gyroscope? Rigidity in space. And so all you have to do is then just nudge this with the tiniest bit of effort, and it will go almost infinitely in that direction of the linear vector, right? It's going to go, all it takes is a nudge, because the energy is going with this, and it's self-generating. Does that make sense? Because because that's what we see in the world around us, right? The snake eating its tail. We got to have this energetic motion of turning. And so you take this energetic motion of turning, take a look at figure A here, right? And so this energetic motion of turning self-sustains, because they're always push-pulling, acting on each other. And then this is basically what's been done to us as a society, I think, in programming, right? Is you create these positive and negatives, and you get them to fight against each other. But when they do that, all that energy then it creates a vortex. All I got to do is nudge it, just a little push in the right direction.
And the snake eating its tail also, everybody stop and look and see what that's represented. That's one of the easier ones to put in words to. If you watch a snake in motion, you'll see it makes the perfect sine waves, and it wrapping around. In other words, a snake represents, in mythology, electromagnetism, the wave, the hissing sound. It's your it is like, again, you're perfect. Anytime you see a snake, add in electromagnetism and things start to make sense. When you ended up with the pharmacy, you do it via alchemy and doing it.
Yep.
When the Ouroboros does it, that's our boundary going around the electrical boundary, the same thing that
Because there's an
creates
edge to
all
it. Yeah,
compasses
because there's an edge to it. Yes.
going in. It's in other words, there's everything has got meaning. With the harmonics and the cymatics, we're also missing out on like one of the most basics that our language, when you go into Sanskrit, the cuneiform, and the ancient Hebrew languages, and you look at the waveform they produce, it's the actual letters.
Yes.
The sounds
Yes.
are, in other words, reality. When you're talking, in the beginning was a word,
Yep.
and you're talking about, again, this creating reality and phasing in. That's exactly right.
Yep.
In the words, the patterns create the reality.
Oh, and I
it
wanted,
shows
yeah,
you in the language.
I
So
wanted to
it's-
mention
it's
that too
scattered.
about Genesis 1:1, right? Because it says that so the Spirit of God hovered, it vibrated, it hovered over the face of the deep, right? So there's that implication immediately of vibration. Right, immediately, and then he said,
Immediately.
"Let there be light," and so immediately brings those two things into connection with one another, the light and the energy, right? So there we go with that immediate interconnection. So again, this is getting
And that is how there is light ahead of the sun, and that is again, it is a frequency, and he like he perturbated the ether and made light.
That's why the sun didn't come to the fourth day, right? Right. Everybody
perfect.
questions that. Everybody questions like, oh my God, how do you get this? There's light on the first day, but then there's no sun or moon or luminaries till the fourth day. Again, set the thing in motion, and the vortex. It is, and that isn't that what we see in the sky clock around us? Wouldn't a vortex?
And isn't that the Fibonacci
Of course, that's our
sequence I
sky
see
clock.
there?
Yep. But this Fibonacci sequence is based on vortex theory, and this is what Victor Schauberger showed. This is why I got so into him when I was researching water, because what he understood, basically, he just said, observe nature and duplicate it. And so he found that water had more energy carrying capacity when it was cold, and he then found all this stuff about water having memory, water having the ability to transmit memory to one another, and I would say it shows preference. It shows a kind of intelligence. I don't know any other way to put it. It's mind-boggling. And then when you get back to it, that's another aspect, is that insofar as I understand, those are the two things that you need for life, is water and sunlight. Right, those are the two things. And if you want to put all four, in fact all five, and then six of the elements in there, right? So you take sunlight, you need that, right? You need air, you need water, you need earth, right? The minerals, and then you need the quintessence. It's got to be made out of something, and then it's got to have the spiritual essence to it. That alternating shadow self, right? What I'm suggesting this morning, right, is in addition to that initial manifest energy, organized energy into matter, that there is the immaterial that is directly connected again, it's directly connected in the same way electricity and magnetism are intertwined. That's my suggestion.
And I'm seeing three. There's a central spire, and then I see actually it's not just two, but three windings going up around it.
Yes, a cord, like a cord, right? Let's see, that's in Scripture. It says, one suffers, two help each other, but a cord of three strands is not easily broken. So it's all over the place. We find this fascinating stuff, right, everywhere. And there's more of it. So when I start to put together these different ideas and start to look at stuff like Walter Russell's Universal One, and he shows, again, this exact same vortex pattern you see right here is exactly what he shows from, in fact, if you give me a minute, I can probably find it again, this idea. Let's see, did I put it in this? Yeah, so this is the first one. That's the Walter Russell periodic table of the elements. And he was still going with the atomic theory, right? The atomic model. Let's see, there's the one. This is his other one, right? See how this wave goes? That's exactly it. It's that Fibonacci sequence that we see. And that's his the Russell periodic chart of the elements. That's Walter Russell's look at it. Right, so if we look at it, we zoom
That
in.
is perfect. I haven't seen this. That's perfect.
Isn't it? I mean, and he does it by octaves: first octave, second, third, fourth,
Second
right?
octave.
Exactly, and their relationships to each other are exactly the same as that we would see with Pythagorean theory and octaves, right? So this is and the fourth phase of water. Yeah, that's the easy exclusion zone.
Helium,
Yeah.
argon, krypton. It's seeing our overlapping
Yep.
octaves, and that is fascinating. Word rhodium.
Right.
Wow. Wow.
Right. So
So
does
how
I'm
do you
such a
move
nerd
one
girl. I am such a
frequency,
nerd girl.
to another?
And the noble metals. These
yeah, to another?
Okay, so that's a great question, Zach. And so now think back in terms of chemistry, right? So you got these two elements, and what you want to do is make a third, right? You sometimes need a catalyst, or not, right? So I think again, I think if it is the way I think it is, it's this idea then that. So let me add this.
I would like
So it'd
this
be
chart
wave.
in
It would
Skype, please.
it would be waveform construction, right? So constructive waveform. So basically, you're taking two different waveforms of different frequencies, and when you add them together, they create a third pattern. Right, so you would see that here, and these are of the same frequency here. But if they were of very different frequencies, what you get is a modulation of that frequency. And so, what needs to happen then, Zach, is that for it to come out to be one of those a frequency that manifests itself, right? So it becomes coherent. So keep in mind that some don't it becomes coherent in these specific frequencies. Or again, in the traditional chemical model, once that you get a certain electrical potential there, then the electron jumps from one orbital to the other. And that's where you get these s, p, d, and f suborbitals. And those are determined by how many electrons they can hold. And that determines which of the elements are going to be more likely to combine with others, has to do with the availability of electrons. Well, again, I don't think it works that way. I think it works with these frequencies, and that the reason that you see these jumps between these quanta is not the availability of electrons. I think that's a misnomer. I think it's because it has to hit a frequency in which the matter becomes coherent at that particular frequency with enough energy. And so it needs a specific amount of energy to do so, and I think that's where a catalyst would come in. You're providing energy, right, a different kind of energy to do that. But that's what I think we have. I reserve the right to be absolutely wrong, but what I'm proposing actually makes more sense than the model that they've given us, because it covers all the bases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Wow.
We always reserve the right to be wrong as we learn more. But again, as you scale this, as you apply it across again, when you start looking and you start reading and the puzzle pieces start overlaying so much.
That's it. That's it.
That's it.
You're saying it, Cami. So that is the multidisciplinary approach, right? It was when you begin to see the different aspects and the way that they work together and the way that they interrelate and interlock with one another. Then you can easily use an analogy from one media to another, from one discipline to another, and go, well, of course it works that way. Right?
I love finding out that I'm wrong.
Oh, God,
That's
yes.
one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
Because what it means
that you're learning something.
Well, what it means is that you've gotten then a correlation between two separate things, and you've worked out the difference between them. And so now there's no longer a gap between them. If you worked out where you were wrong, that means you have a right answer, because you have now a proof, right? Because that's how you know that you were wrong, because you have a proof. So absolutely. The more and so this is what I have long told my students, right, is that don't be disappointed by failure, because those are learning opportunities. I mean, you're never going to be perfect all the time, because if you think you are, you're going to be sadly disappointed and you'll quit. You must use failures. It's simply just something that didn't work, right? It's an opportunity to learn from, and so you can then cross that off through a process of elimination or what have you. That didn't work, and whatever you can learn from it, right? Then you have growth. This is this image I'm showing right now, right? Demonstrates how even those are two sources of the same amplitude and frequency, but you can see how the waveforms interact with one another. Okay, Zach, I can hear the gerbils turning in your head. I can hear it happening.
Yeah. I'm thinking about that chart. I noticed that Mercury was in between gold and lead, along with thallium. But I found that quite interesting that mercury was in between the gold and the lead on that guy's chart.
Well, this is
Because there's a lot of old alchemists that say that's one of the mediums you needed to transmutate things was mercury.
Ooh,
It
he's got an
went
unknown.
well with
He's got
a lot of stuff.
an unknown in there. That's interesting. Fascinating. And here's, the heavy ones. Again, an unknown. And he's got this unknown right underneath lutetium, which is, again, at that overlap place where we saw cobalt earlier.
Yeah, they have filled that in on the table now. He was ahead of his time on it. They have filled that in.
Fascinating. And I did you see this note here? End and the beginning. Because 9 leads to 10, which
He's right.
Yeah.
Zach, I have this chart. Karen sent it to me while we've been in the chat because I also caught Zach's eye. It caught my eye as a way to work on how it works, just because so much of it is wrong. He seems to have a lot here. I'm looking with the alchemy and the different things. We know alchemy and that along the ways. We know that the languages were scattered, and we know that they've intentionally tried to deceive us. And so I think there's always trying to look for that in it. I'd like to see how it fits on the harmonics, and the way it would fit in naturally would be to me, a more realistic guide to see where the patterns produce, as opposed to, I look for, again, a lot of the times for deception in the way that they try to lead us.
And don't discount this one. Note how he's got this put together. The positives and the negatives in a quadrupolar arrangement with the female and the male, right, laid in there. And look at how he's organized them in this chart. It's remarkable. And again,
perfectly spiraling.
Yep. Well, that was amazing, dude.
So which end of the light spectrum is matter at? Like, if I were at the lower end of the light spectrum, if I kept going, would that turn into matter? Or is it the higher frequency stuff?
And that's a great question, and I'm not sure how to answer that. I've had that thought before, and wondering if aether, right, is the media. If that is the media for all of it, then that's a great question. I don't know, man. My sense of it would probably be higher. It would be the higher frequencies rather than the lower. But who knows? I don't know.
I see it more as on the ether and acting on, again, the primordial waters, on what you're going to, again, what you were talking before, and what you're cast into, and a combination of the vibrations, temperatures, and everything coming into play on it.
And I think it would probably...
We have creation in the mix too, that we can't overlook. The creation has to take place somewhere. It just doesn't element in. We have a connected, every tree. I mean, I believe each one of us, everybody has got a full connection through here, not only our physical. So
what if we were to think about it in this way, right? So again, I'm just pulling this out of my butt, right? So just bear with me, right to be wrong. But what if we were to think about it this way, right? So we have this axis this way, right? So, and then we have this axis this way. Sorry, I drew that badly. Do that again. So we have that axis, right, going, and then there's this axis that crosses there, right? So then we would have that third axis, and I don't even know how to put it on here, right? And so then if there's that carrier wave, then what we would have is matter. So think of matter again, energy becoming matter in as a wave field in the etheric. So, but so then you have the positive phase, the negative phase, right? So depending on how those work together, what if you then have organic matter, mineral, right? So organic, mineral, and then there's that, I don't know, kind of something else, or it is that, I think, that third axis, which then helps define this morphic resonance, again, that tells it what to be. I think.
And have you seen the experiments where they took I'm trying to remember, Bob would be better at this, where they took like a tadpole or whatever, an egg, and then they shined a light of a lizard or something a little bit different into into it or whatever, crossed over with light or whatever, and it grew the wrong animal. I mean, it grew the animal that they intended. I do not have this right, and I'm trying to reach back
No, but that's
on it.
that's directly related to morphic resonance, and I think I remember that,
Right.
and I think it was something. Yes, there was some energetic field that got changed, and
Right.
it did become something else,
It became something else, but it self-corrected in further generations, which was interesting.
right. And then again, if you combine that with the other experiment, and this is kind of creepy and gross, but they had these worms, right, which reacted in a certain way to light. So when the light came on, they got shocked, and so they learned that was a bad thing. Generationally, they passed that on to their kids. Okay, so that genetically, their kids learned, their offspring learned to fear the light. They responded with the jump to the light. Now, now this is where it gets really weird. Then they take some of those trained worms and chop them up and make a puree and feed it to other worms, and other worms learn to be afraid of the light. What the fuck? Okay, so that is, again, water. To me, that is the water carrying the information. That's what it was, even genetically, carried in that morphic resonance field. I think that, again, to me, makes the most sense. Again, I don't know, but I think the more, again, I look at the things and I try to put what I see and overlay it with something else that I see, right? So these, again, the analogy of electricity and magnetism and how they have that direct interaction with one another. I think that's what we're seeing, is the etheric body, the material with the immaterial. There's a spiritual or design blueprint element to it on the one, and then there's the manifestation of it on the other axis. That's what I think we're seeing, and at least that's what I'm proposing.
So is the Schumann resonance, would that be
the carrier frequency? Maybe, or maybe that's the fundamental frequency of the Earth itself. I have no reason to believe that terra firma or Gaia is not a living sentient entity. I mean, many ancient cultures believed so. There's evidence for it. I don't particularly, again, I don't hold it as the creator being like many do, the mother goddess as it being the creator being. I don't see it that way. But I do have no reason to think that it might not be its own complex organism, sentient being, right? Maybe not. Maybe it is. I don't know. So maybe, but again, maybe the Schumann resonance is the fundamental frequency of Gaia. Again, I don't know. Or maybe it's the carrier frequency, or maybe it's the retuning frequency for all of it, right? Maybe that is the root frequency of the ether itself. I'm not certain. And again, some experiments, though, could test it. We could certainly set up some experiments, I think, and play around with some of these things in terms of modulating frequencies, using additive frequency synthesis to create effects and see what effects they have. And we could certainly extrapolate from that and make some inferences.
Indeed.
Have you looked into the Schumann resonance?
Yeah. In fact, we showed some areas in which anomalies in which it seemed to have blacked out, or they just deleted the data. Probably more likely that they turned off the data for a while. But all the receivers worldwide went down for a period of about 20 hours, not too long ago. It's very strange.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Hey, Bob.
We can.
Hey,
I added Bob to the call to clarify
Absolutely.
on the things. I know he had something to say. What I was mumbling on the yes.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
welcome, Bob.
What Cami was trying to convey was years ago we attended a David Wilcock seminar, of which I used to be a huge David Wilcock fan, and in
Did
one
they
of
serve
these
blue chicken? No, I'm sorry. Blue chicken wings.
Brown cow.
Blue chicken wings. Yeah. All right.
How now, brown cow?
Right.
So anyway, he was talking about some of the experiments that were being done with DNA and also morphic resonance.
Right.
And so he was saying that what they would do is they would take like an egg of a frog, right?
Yep.
And then they would take either the egg of a tadpole or an embryo of a tadpole, something like that, and do nothing more than shine a light through it and onto the frog egg.
Okay.
And it would automatically then take on
Pick up characteristics of
the
it.
frog characteristics. Yes.
Fucking phenomenal. Yeah. Okay. And what was the media? Do you know if it was water? Right, because that would make a difference too. If it not just
It
light, but
was.
if it was in a media of water, then light would simply be the carrier, right, between the two,
Yes.
and that water would be the media actually transmitting the data. And again, so here's a test, Bob. That again, I don't know how much veracity to give it. I read it. I don't. Who knows? Because it deals with AIDS, right? So basically, the idea was they were trying to use the principle of spooky acts at a distance, right? So that they had taken some DNA, and the characteristic of it was that they infected it with AIDS. So they would have a marker, and they had a control, and then they they ground it up, diluted it in water, right, and then had exactly the same sequence of water in France. And so the New York MIT was one, France University was the other, and apparently the DNA sequence became infected at the France location. So showing this again, inherent interconnection. So really strange stuff. And again, I don't know how much veracity to give it because the nature of the people, MIT and stuff like that. I just don't know. But it's consistent with some other studies that I
Exactly.
I have
Several
more
other people
faith
have
in.
actually done it. So I would tend to believe that it's probably true. Also, one other thing that I do know about this, and this honestly is what makes me feel good about some of the things going around today, is what they noticed was when they were able to make these genetic modifications in these organisms, it wouldn't take very long, like maybe 1 or 2 generations, before the DNA would reset itself back to its default.
Right. And we can see
characteristics.
we see similar things with within a single generation or two at the outside with pigeons and feral hogs. They will within one generation start growing tusks and hair, unlike a domestic pig. It's remarkable how quickly again pigeons can within a single generation begin. City pigeons are gray and flying rats. But when they get out of that, the colors take on again. Some of it has to do with their food intake, I'm certain, but certainly genetically they exhibit these things really quickly. Adaptation. So it's remarkable. And if light is part of the carrier free, I mean, that says a great deal to me, is that if light is part of the energetic carrier and then water is the media through which it's done, right? So we have, man, this is, I'm getting excited. I like this shit, man.
It's really cool. It makes you wonder, though.
That's how it works.
It makes me wonder if they're using a coherent or an incoherent light, because obviously you have too much power on a coherent light, it's going to burn things up. But it just seems to me that it would be more logical that a coherent light would carry those DNA.
Yeah, you would think so. Yeah,
changes.
And it's maybe a very low power or a frequency that's offset, right? So that rather than being a directly coherent frequency, it would be at a tangent, right, or a harmonic frequency, such that it could carry the information without directly disambiguation, right? But and that makes me just immediately envision again the Rife technique, that disambiguation of cells. Immediately, right, by hitting that frequency. And if I'm not mistaken, from the previous research I did, typically it was a combination of multiple frequencies. Again, not a single frequency, but the multiple frequencies that would cause this disambiguation and complete collapse of the cell into just a gelatinous organic material. So fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I've used the Rife machine, and all I did was the detox because I didn't really have any ailments to really play with, but I went and did a water fast for a few days, drank nothing but water during that time. And on the first day, I felt fine. And then you skip a day and you do another day. And after that second day, I noticed my urine started turning a little bit darker. And after the third one, that next day, I felt like crap. I really did. It was like even though I was flushing all the toxins out.
Yeah. When you're processing it'll do that to you.
Yeah.
But then once it releases it all, it's very interesting. Now the way that the Rife, the way that the Rife delivers it, Zach, and also Baldini, it's instead of using light, obviously, as a medium, even though they are using light technology to deliver Rife frequencies now. But for example, our particular Rife machine puts it on a 20 megahertz carrier wave. Okay. So
you could do that with a laser, though, right? I mean, you could use light, just the frequency.
yes,
Right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But in this case, what's happening is it modulates it onto like a 20 megahertz carrier wave, and it's amplitude modulated. So essentially what's happening is the frequencies that are actually destroying the organisms are contained within the envelope of the carrier wave.
Right. Yep. Just like radio. Yeah.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's radio. Yeah.
Exactly. And the body just kind of naturally demodulates the 20 megahertz.
Sure.
And, you've got the product
Cancels
left
it
over
out.
of, the lower frequency.
Yeah. No, that's a good solution.
The first Rife machines made with light tubes?
Yeah, I think
they used. Yeah.
I thought he did
And then
use.
they switched it over to pads because the light tubes were just too expensive. Things like that, and they were having problems with them. And this one was
I thought they were finicky, right? Really effective, but finicky.
Finicky.
Yeah. Right, and the pads weren't as efficient, but they had a much wider range of operation. So again, I don't know because I wasn't there, but go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say the other visual I want you guys to get in mind, and also you especially, Bob, is when I'm flipping the Polaroid filters over the mica and things that are anisotropic, and you see something that's colorless, and as you change the angle of the pure light that's coming in and just let it in at one angle, you can pick up every color of the rainbow, again, just by orientation of only letting in one path of light on that angle. So if you think of that too, along with the that's when you're talking about columnization, and is it scattered or is it that? Again, if you polarize, or again, like in certain bands, you can pull out.
Well,
it makes more sense that it would be columnated.
Let's come back
right
then to this idea of just kind of randomly, I'm squirreling over here, but the idea of, again, light and water, right, being the two interactive forces there. And we certainly know that certain frequencies, wavelengths of light can clean water, right, and certainly have a profound effect upon it. In my study of water over the last 2.5, 3 years, I have come to believe, accept, whatever you want to say, strongly suspect, or preponderance of evidence strongly suggest that, again, water being one of the basics of building blocks of life, it's necessary. And because, again, if what I understand is correct, and my inferences are accurate to a degree, that it does have a kind of intelligence, a sentience, it contains the information needed for life. And so if then, again, sunlight is the other component, those two things, again, passing information back and forth, this is my area of curiosity, right, is that since that is the nature, we're told, between 65 and 80% water, depending on what day it is, and all that sort of stuff, right? But if we are all this water, right, and we know that water is contained in food and everything that we consume and in the air and everything, right? Many of us have focused on the idea of keeping our water clean using reverse osmosis or filtration systems or distillation, whatever kind, to do this. I would love to do a series of experiments to introduce, again, light and sound into water, and then with crystallization, much like Emoto, freezing it or making it come into crystals, and especially observing fourth phase of water, the exclusion zone, to see what kind of crystals form. And if you can get coherent phases of water and coherent structure to appear with specific, again, polarized and wavelengths of light and sound, I would love to see, again, it would stand to reason to me that if they're poisoning everything around us, including the atmosphere, electromagnetic spectrum, food, water, everything, it would stand to reason that they're treating not just with fluoride, but with some sort of electromagnetic or other means to turn water into something valueless or harmful to us. And if we could reverse that process, how much healthier would we all be then?
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. Has Cami ever told you about the experiment that we did with our water? She may or may not have, but
no, go ahead. Yeah, tell me. I love this stuff.
So what we did is right now we're using a water distiller, but I also have this piece of machinery called a John Ellis water machine. And basically the difference between the John Ellis water machine and a regular distiller is that it takes and it subjects the water while it's in the steam state to a high intensity full spectrum light bulb. Okay.
Yep.
So it kind of energizes the water is the idea behind it. And of course, it makes, fabulous water. It's very wasteful. We used to fill up our hot tub, making water, right? with just the discharge.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we did that was really super interesting about it, I mean, it was already really good water, but then I would take a CD that I got, and it was called Holy Harmony. And basically what it was is a collection of it's kind of a continuous chant using the solfeggio tones.
Mm-hmm.
And I would take a set of headphones, put the Holy Harmony CD on, and I'd put the headphones over the top of the 5-gallon water jug. And I would turn it on and let it play for a couple of days, right? And then we'd have one sitting right next to it that did not get that. And the result is that two things that were absolutely remarkable is one, the smell of it was so fresh. It was like a rainstorm in the in the mountains that it just happened in the mountains.
With such a sweetness.
Such a sweetness. And the taste of the water actually became sweet. And I don't mean sugary sweet. I mean, it's kind of hard to describe.
Fresh.
Yeah, fresh sweet. It was
have you ever had glacial melt? Have you ever had glacial melt water?
No, I don't think so.
Oh my gosh! So when I was a kid, especially, Mount Rainier here in the Pacific Northwest is got, I think, 12 glaciers on it, and there's several places that there are glacial meltwater, and it's this iridescent blue color. It's hard to describe. You can find pictures of it, but it is this just iridescent sort of blue, and the mineral, the melt, is so. I can't even describe it. It's got mineral content. It's ice cold. It is the freshest, cleanest. And part of the thing that, again, this is what Schauberger discovered, is it's the motion, right? It's this energetic motion of the water that gives it renewed vitality. And that, again, water that's been processed over and over, it's tired. It's dead. It doesn't have this vitality. It has to go through this whole process. And so this coming down the mountain and going through all this process, and movement is a huge part of it, bouncing off rocks, doing all this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Okay, we should be back now. We have some sort of local buffer thing here. Hopefully you guys are still there.
Yep, we are.
Okay, good. Yep, it locally skipped here for a minute, so sorry about that. I could hear you. That was the other part. I could hear you, but anyway. So I didn't miss really anything, other than you guys couldn't hear me.
Well, you just started fizzling out at the last part there and started getting choppy, and then you just disappeared.
Yeah, it's the nature of me. It's not surprising for me. I do that. But no, this is, again, with Schauberger, right, the water being in motion, right, going through this process and certainly cycling through the rain, that sort of stuff, but coming down the mountain, mixing with the minerals. If you ever get the opportunity to taste glacial meltwater, it'll change. Like, you'll never want anything else. You'll be like, oh my gosh, that's the target. I used to get that when I was a kid. Is that glacial melt? It's pretty amazing stuff. Okay, I mean, you guys keep talking. Hopefully, I think it's coming back. There we go. All right, I think we're back.
We're good.
Oh dear, it's such a mess. I guess we're getting grappled. I don't know. From time to time, it just I see it happen, and it actually occurs.
I honestly wonder about that. I got to tell you, Baldini, because I mean, a couple of the shows, especially when we get kind of intense into subjects, and specifically on subjects that I don't think they want us talking about. And a spinner, I'm seeing a spinner on the.
Mm-hmm.
You're kidding. Okay, so all right, let's see here. Oh, gee.
Probably we can.
We'll try it. Oh dear, this is awesome. All right, so
it doesn't matter. The beginning of the show is such an excerpt. That right there, exerting out the presentation you did at the beginning, mind blown. I mean, just
so I can tell you for
perfectly.
sure. I've been monitoring this, so I can tell you for sure. OBS looked like it was choking early on, but as Bob was saying, it's always right at those interesting moments. It really is. And then after that, what occurred was OBS was fine. It was chugging along with no problem. And then the YouTube Studio showed that it was not receiving data. And so really, really strange. And exactly at the moment you were saying that they picked those interesting moments. It's exactly the moment it skipped out. So again, I'm not a naturally either superstitious or paranoid person. But just because you're not paranoid doesn't mean they're not fucking with you.
That's so true. That's so true.
Oh dear. So NSA
No,
guys.
they are. But what do we say? We say fuck the fucking fuckers.
We absolutely do. My wife and I talk regularly to the NSA guys, and we try to pitch. We fuck with them. So there's that. All right.
I do that when I'm in the shower sometimes.
Yeah. And
I
started. I started years ago, right after the events in September back in the day, and so I used to mess with my friends and. Because of the background that I have, and sort of, I would harass them, especially the more paranoid ones, and I would say, like stuff like Osama, bomb, terrorist. I'd say all that sort of stuff, and they would just hang up. They'd get so freaked out.
My favorite was plutonium.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Just say it out of the blue. Plutonium.
Yeah. I had a list by my desk there. I just go into stuff like, algorithm and all sorts of, just different stuff. And it was amusing, back in the day. Because I've known for a long time, they collect everything, and they have forever, since well before we were born, all of it. And the only thing that's changed is their wherewithal, the ability to go through it. Right, and who to target, and that's what LifeLog. I mean, Facebook has
got so powerful.
Yeah.
That's what Hoover was all about, getting dirt on everybody.
Exactly, and that's what
He didn't
LifeLog.
care
I mean,
if you were
Facebook.
famous right now or not. Maybe one day you will be famous, and he'll have dirt on you.
Or we can make you
know?
famous, especially if we have dirt on you, right? Because you're already compromised. And that's the old school way. It's been used by every secret society going back for time immemorial. It's the early compromise and the carrot and the stick, right? Yeah, spill your secrets, get compromised. We give you something you like. We have photographs of you with the underage girls or boys or whatever it is. And now here we're going to do another favor for you, and now you owe us. And you can now choose to be exposed or do well. Very few people choose the former. So in any case,
yeah, exactly.
So great book out there if you get a moment, called "Mistakes Were Made, but Not by Me," and how compromise usually is a slippery slope. It becomes, I think many people who spend time on these sort of things, right? That your character is ultimately the net result, the culmination of the little decisions that you make. It's never the crisis doesn't create character; it simply reveals it, and it's the small decisions that you make every day that ultimately build character. And when it's the same with muscle memory, right? It's the same reason that soldiers or firefighters or whatever go through such training, is that when push comes to shove, when the bullets start flying, your natural instinct is to run away. But for soldiers, their training kicks in, and so their muscle memory is to run toward it. It's like, with fire, whatever. That's the point of training. And you're gonna default when shit hits the fan. You're gonna default to whatever your default setting is, right? Whatever you do most often. And so this has to.
I found it real interesting though that even those soldiers that ran to the fight in Vietnam, like 75-80% of them aimed high.
Yep, they would try not to kill.
They were never trained to kill another person.
Right. They had a natural aversion to killing a human. That's right. They wanted to scare them or get them away to stop them from killing them. So self-defense, self-preservation, rather than the intention to kill another.
That would be really, really difficult for me to do that, unless, of course, myself or my family were in imminent danger. But just the idea of taking another human life it's very repugnant to me.
It is to me, but again, from my perspective, I've seen so much in human nature that I think, with most things there, but for the great grace of God go I. And like you said, if the circumstances were such an imminent threat, I will say this, that if you're incapable of it, then you're not peaceful, you're harmless.
Yeah.
Right. I think there's a great line in C.S. Lewis's Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, in which Lucy asks Mr. and Mrs. Beaver when she finds out that Aslan is a lion. She goes, "Oh dear, is he quite safe?" I go, "Well, of course not, but he's good." Right. So the difference being, well, of course not safe. I am not safe.
Safe, exactly.
But I'm good. or at least that's my intention, is to cause no harm. But if you're incapable of it, you're harmless.
Yeah. I have to tell you, we obviously have weapons around the house, and for me, shooting has always been more of a fun sport and stuff like that. And, I find myself, especially these days, thinking that, in these times, it seems to be, it seems to me that I need to really start mentally preparing myself for, the good chance that something could, encroach on our family, right? And that I may have to use deadly force. And that's just, man, that's a thought that it's hard to get with, but it's something that you really do have to kind of prepare yourself for, because if you have any logical reasoning at all and you see what's going on with the world, I think the chances that you would have to use deadly force are increasing.
I sort of hate to admit this in a public forum, but it's not even that the thought had occurred to me so much as I kind of got an inner nudge that I would certainly witness it, whether or not I would have to perform it. That I would certainly witness it in sooner than later. Right? Don't know why.
Yeah.
So it's
I got a nudge that I wouldn't.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So
maybe you'll get you'll get yours on the way.
When you come here, the nudge will change.
Perhaps. And again, as I spoke with someone this morning, right? I said when they were asking for advice, I go, well, I can only speak from experience, and I can tell you this: that experience is not always shared. Right. So what might make sense to me might not be the perfect thing in your circumstances, because I don't know all the details, right? So, and I can't, but I can take what I get and speak from my experience. But the experience is not always completely shared. So, we have that.
Exactly.
But to that, again, I would, if I were to add anything to this conversation right at the end, it's something that I've been trying to speak to for a while. And I think I'd just circle back to where I began at the beginning, right, is how delighted I am to have made such great friends and to found such impressive people in our community. And it's growing, right, not just the size of the community, but its depth. But if it is indeed, as many of us have found, again, a creation that we live in, and a necessary antecedent being a creator, and if it is, in fact, a spiritual battle that we are engaged in, then the primary thing, right, is to engage in that spiritual battle. That as interesting as this stuff is, and understanding the nature of the world around us and trying to figure it out, to me, it, again, more clearly represents and demonstrates the brilliance and the beauty of the creator and the creation. But simply knowing this stuff will not win that battle, right? We are anything other than engaging in that battle is. Well, I mean, it's if our intention is to get as much information as we can, it is to me about the same as trying to get as much money as you can. Both will get you about as far.
Yeah,
right?
No kidding.
Yeah. So, but to me, one of the beautiful aspects about this is that understanding it, right, to me, more fully reveals or more strongly suggests the nature of our Creator. And the beauty and the intricacy of the design, and how we are, in the words of the psalmist, fearfully and wonderfully made. It's remarkable. But anyway, I just wanted, like I said, I wanted to introduce these ideas today. It's the second time I kind of brought it forward, but I wanted to get the take of other smart people and kind of go into a bit more detail after I've been thinking about it for about a couple of weeks, and get your take, and hopefully see if this is something that's of value to the community and for people who are interested in such things.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of introductions, I think we have a little bit of news. And I was just wondering if you wanted to announce that on your show here or not, or if you want me to announce it.
I'll let you do it. I haven't really told anybody, so I figured I'd let you do that. So go right ahead. Yeah, great time.
Okay, guys. So, many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the Globebuster show. And we have branched out, and we do a Sunday and a Wednesday night show. But Cami and I were talking, and we were saying what we really need, because I like to take Globebusters in a much more technical realm, much more technical type of forum. And we decided that we needed somebody to come on board that was at least on par, in a technical aspect with me. right? If not more so. And we settled on that individual, and that individual would, of course, be none other than the Great Baldini.
That's because you couldn't find that person, and so having not found that person, you had to go with your third best option.
Yeah, right. No, so we said, every time you've been on the show, your technical presentations, you and I bounce off each other very, very well.
Yeah, we do.
And I just think it's a beautiful match. So yes, the newest Globebuster is the Great Baldini.
Hey, thank you.
Welcome aboard, sir.
Appreciate it. And as I told Cami again, I'm very honored, right, delighted, and again, certainly. I kind of flabbergasted a little bit, but I certainly will approach it with the due diligence and the seriousness with which it deserves, and again, try to do you guys proud. But I love the topics; these are things that I am fascinated with, and of course, you can hear in my voice when I look at these things. I get just excited like a kid in a candy store. It's like, man, this stuff is amazing, and so the further we can delve and dig into this stuff and keep an open mind toward these things, I love it. I love it, and there's, to me, no better team on the internet right now as a group of people who are dedicated to doing this than Globebusters, and have been for a long period of time. So I'm delighted and couldn't be more honored. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we are really happy to have you, sir, and I'm just really excited about it. And I'm the same way. We're all. I married a nerd. I'm a nerd.
Yeah, me too.
My sons are nerds.
Yep, my kids are nerds. We're just proud dweebs. So good stuff, man. Yeah. So I'm excited. I can't wait. And once kind of again figure all the scheduling the stuff out, that'll be again. I'm stoked. This would be super exciting, and I have a feeling like we'll make progress not just in explaining it to people, but even making progress in better understanding it. And won't that be cool? Especially as
Absolutely.
My plan to move.
Because I have to tell you, your presentation today, I'm very familiar with the subject matter that you presented today, but I really liked your take on it, and I was looking at it in the way you're presenting, and it's like, this is beautiful, absolutely loved it. So you're right. It's the diversity of presentation. And I've said this for a long time, I can say something one way and somebody may go, oh, wow, that's incredible. Other people are like, I have no clue what you're talking about. And then somebody will also come along and say essentially the exact same thing, but in different verbiage, and they get it, So that's the diversity in communication that I think that you will bring to the Globebusters.
Oh, and you're right. You're so right about that people learn in different ways. And sometimes, I have, a little bit of a reputation for being long-winded, kind of loquacious. But in part, understanding that idea is that people sometimes, if I am trying to explain it and that light bulb doesn't go on over their head, I'll try to back up and restate it, right, in a way that maybe will work. And so sometimes that takes longer. But I'm trying to, look for that communication, that key of understanding before moving on. But again, yes, I'm so excited. Again, the team is so brilliant. Everybody that has been both a panelist and guest on Globebusters is, again, the brightest of the bright and cream of the crop. And the different angles that everybody brings too. Again, I love from anthropology to to physics, and you have background in radio and microwave transmission. There's a couple of things I've been wanting to talk to you about forever. In terms of back in the day, I worked in network radio, and we had the network did not have satellites. We did everything with microwave transmission, right? So that we could have complete duplex handshake control of the radio stations. So we had radio stations all over the state of Texas, and of course those have to be line of sight with one another. So just keep that in mind, right?
Okay.
And the guy who developed the system and was a part owner of the station, George Marty, and if you're probably familiar with the Marty unit, MARTI, it was used in radio. He developed again as a microwave radio to do that for remote broadcast for radio stations. So you take this unit out with you, and I was talking to him again. I was in my early 20s, and this would have been late 1980s, very early 1990s. And I asked him why we weren't using satellites. And he, at the time, the bird, right? And he says, I don't believe in them. And at the time I thought,
Wow.
At the time I thought he just didn't have faith. I thought he didn't have faith in the technology, whatever, right?
Right.
But I didn't really put it together, and then later I realized that one of the shots that we made was from a tower in Texas called Chalk Mountain, and it had. And I got to go back and look at it because I don't want to have anybody come back and go, oh, you misstated that. So, but I've gone back and looked at it. Anyway, Chalk Mountain, I think it's 1,300 feet, and then there was we had a tower on top of that. But we had to shoot to San Saba, Texas, which is 389 miles, 267, something like that. It's a really super long shot, dude. It would be impossible. I did the math on it when that was one of the things I was first looking at in late 2014. That sort of came to mind, and I suddenly went, oh, there's no way. There's no way. There would have been a huge amount of. That was one of the things that has to be line of sight. There was absolutely no way we were making that shot 24 hours a day, every day for years. We were making that fully duplex handshake shot on the microwave all the way from Chalk Mountain to San Saba. Which absolutely impossible. So,
and it's amazing these days. They are talking more and more about how the supposed higher frequencies are now able to duct along the curvature of the Earth, which of
ducting.
Course is nonsense.
It's nonsense. Yeah, it's like as though air suddenly becomes a conductor, right? And just like whoop, zoom around the corner, or light, right? It's got something like a fiber optic connection. No, that's preposterous. Everything that they come up with is an ad hoc, right? It's always an ad hoc explanation. But special pleading. It's we talked about this last week, right? The excuse is they can never really go after the data. There's always got to be some sort of ad hoc, special pleading. So
exactly. Yeah, that is so true. And when you're learning about ham radio, and of course I got my ham ticket 50 plus years ago, and one of the things they teach you about how DXing works, or long distance communication, is of course skip. Well, what is skip? Well, basically what they say is you transmit, it bounces off the ionosphere, then it comes down, it bounces off the Earth, and then it goes back up and bounces off the ionosphere.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, and then when I was in microwave, that made sense, because I was sitting there thinking, well, okay, so we've got this Fresnel zone that you've got to obey. Otherwise, you can get a multipath condition, and your signal will be all distorted. So, and then, after I became a flat earther, it became really apparent to me that, things aren't bouncing off the Earth. It is the nature of EM waves and stuff like that to return to Earth ground.
Yep.
And that's exactly what they're doing.
And you would have so much signal loss if you really were bouncing off an ionosphere. I mean, just the principle, the idea that it's a charged plate, it would distort the signal really badly. And even if it could, it wouldn't be a perfect reproduction, and you would get such signal path loss. It would be ridiculous. I mean, the idea is ridiculous, and I always had a problem with that. Even AM radio doing the skips, right? It just seemed like bouncing. Really, it's bouncing off an electromagnetic fence, and with perfect resolution and fidelity. Have all kinds of problems with that.
What's that?
Go ahead, Zach.
Does a radio wave, like if it were to be in an electric field, which it is, positive above, negative down below us, does that radio wave get affected by that electric field? Does it bring it to Earth? Is that what is doing that?
Well, typically negatively. I mean, typically you're going to introduce distortion if you mess with the wave at all, right? The whole point of depending on the carrier wave, if you have a carrier wave like amplitude modulation or frequency modulation as an FM radio, or the variety of ways that you can carry it. If you have a carrier wave versus just an energetic wave, but either way, if you encounter other electromagnetic phenomena, you're going to introduce distortion or
Exactly.
You're going to modulate that. And so that modulation is by definition a degradation of the field, right? Just the degradation of the signal. So no, it's going to reduce the quality. You're not going to get perfect fidelity like a mirror. It's not going to be like an electromagnetic mirror. You're going to bounce it off. Yep. I mean, even though they say that, right? Angle of incidence equals angle of reflection, the same as you would have with light, but it's not true. I mean, what do you think a Faraday cage is, right? You introduce enough electromagnetic interference, essentially you're canceling it out. You're absorbing it, basically. But if you, for example, think of noise canceling headphones. They sample the ambient sound and then reproduce it out of phase with each other to cancel each other out so it goes away. You can do that same thing electromagnetically, right? Take a sample of the electromagnetic field and reverse it, right? Invert the signal and create a static field. You could do that. But anytime you're going to introduce electromagnetic energy into a wave of any kind, well, that's distortion, and that's degradation of a fidelity
That's right. And
by definition.
So, could you block the electric field if you built a vacuum chamber around another chamber?
I don't know about vacuum because, I mean, now you're talking about taking the ether out. I don't think so. But could you block it by, you could deflect it, right? You could sample its frequency and either deflect it or cancel it out and create enough energy close enough to its frequency to invert it, right? To create a node. There's a lot of things you could do, but not a vacuum. Just because, vacuums are so difficult to create, and you'd have to make an etheric vacuum, which I don't even know you could do.
It's not possible. We tried to figure that out with the whole fiber optic gyro. There's no way that you can block the ether.
Yeah, I don't think so.
It's just not possible.
Yeah, I don't think so.
If you were to take out the ether, you wouldn't. Nothing
would
no
be there.
Equipment to
There would
measure
be-
it.
well,
Would
there'd be
exist.
nothing
You
there.
wouldn't exist to do it. You wouldn't. In other words, you can't. It doesn't. You're taking away reality.
Non-matter.
You can't-
Yeah, there would be nothing there to manifest matter. Right, because it's the fabric. It is. We talk about the fabric of
right,
space-time.
you can't-
That's
you
it.
can't.
That's the closest thing there is to Einsteinian space-time garbage. But the fabric, but it's not really. I don't think of fabric in that way. But there is the idea of a fabric there. Right, and I talked about this before.
When
Again, weaving.
when they
Think
talk
of
about
like
they
a
talk
Jell-O
about
mold.
a 2D. They talk about
It's
a
the
2D
Jell-O.
weaving. It's
It's the
simplistic.
Jell-O holding all the fruit in, like in a Jell-O mold.
Right.
The
So-
Jell-O would be the ether,
And
while
so
we would be the little
I
fruit.
don't even think that's it
No.
either. I think it's
Okay, so think-
much deeper. Again, it's the magnet. It's more than.
think about this. This is what I introduced last time, and I kind of skipped over it this time because I wanted to focus on the other. But given the idea of a fabric, right? And I was going to wrap up, and again, I'm such a nerd, I can't do it. Right? And the terms that we use, the words have meaning, right? One of the things that occurred to me is textiles and weaving. So we have this fabric of space time. Right, and considering that, one of the things in fabric is you've got this. Oh, come on, you're gonna mess with me.
Weft.
Yep, exactly.
Weft.
The weft, and the other one is called
The
what?
nap.
The warp.
The weft and the warp. Yeah.
Yeah. So then you go, oh, time warp. Let's do a time warp. Oh dear, I'm not making a connection. That's bad.
Yes,
You
you
are-
are with me. I got it.
I got it.
So, but anyway,
Oh,
so I'm,
Rocky.
yeah. So what I'm saying basically, right, is this idea of the warp and the weft, and so if you have these two, directionalities, and that's what I was going with the same idea of electromagnetism and or magnetism and electricity going in those alternate directions, then you have the same idea of the warp and the weft of the fabric of space-time, right? One crossing and interweaving with the other, and that is the interconnectedness. That is the fabric of space-time. That's the network, and so we have an enormous litany of references in. Written material, fables, myths, that sort of stuff, of there being supernatural beings that create a literally weave time, right, or that sort of stuff. There's that allegorical idea that's been out there for a very long time, and I don't think, again, there's a mistake there. So it's intriguing to me. Again, I don't know how to really put that together, but it's intriguing to me nonetheless.
Okay, let's put it together like this in a visual, Baldini. Think of, again, space and time, where you are in space because you're under a sky clock, and the sky clock is more. It's coming from underneath and it's coming from above. It's the energies. It's where you are on the ley lines. It's where everything affects and touches you, and it's only like that at that one space. So where you are in space is where you are in time. And if you think of weaving it in that way, what you can do is you can work into the weave little portals and wefts and warps into the weave, so you would be able to go in and outside of time in space. In other words, we describe everything as space travel, but that's because we turn everything backwards, because in history it's never been space travel. It's been you've traveled through a warp in time into a different age, in a weft there.
So again, yeah, the
again,
warp and weft.
spun around.
And if we take this idea, right, and so the idea of weaving,
course, yeah.
warp and weft, so here's the one axis, and keep in mind the other axis, and this is exactly what we have going on, I think, with the fabric of reality. And I think the reason we use those terms, there's a reason for it, right? The fabric of reality,
It is. They have it, it's real, and then they distort they make it space-time and things later on, but the terms have always been there, so they have to twist it to take us out of reality.
Yep, exactly, and misdescribe it, right? Sort of turn it around, and make it something else. And that's where, again, there we have gravity, right? It's a distortion of the fabric of space-time by the unequal distribution of mass. So in any case, yes. So I wanted to introduce that idea as well, because that term came to me. I'm like, oh yeah, fabric. So let's get to the idea that we have this warp and weft and time warp. I mean, again, this is fascinating stuff. However,
somebody's got to sing the "Let's Do the Time Warp" again.
I know it. I knew it was going to happen.
Don't make me sing.
The hop to the left.
Yes, exactly. Damn it, Janet from another planet, right? So we have that. Oh, see, that's good. This is, again, more vortex stuff, and this is the stuff that's fascinating to me. Everything that I study leads me back to these same topics: the vortex thing, motion, energy, frequency, vibration, manifestation, organized, how energy becomes organized into matter. Everything leads me here. That's what I come to is this.
It's what's amazing about this, Baldini, is you find that studying vortexes, you always keep coming around in circles.
Yeah, you do. It always comes back. You always come back around, and you can find it easy to get turned around. And I keep wondering if I don't know if again, I'm going to get in trouble here, with the current climate, but. Jokes are funny. If you get, I don't know, somebody from China to study this, would they get turned around and disoriented? I don't know. So it's a bad joke.
That's good.
That's
a good joke. I like it.
Well, this always leads me back to it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice.
Yeah.
And what you went back to in the beginning is being smart does not make you good.
Nope.
Being good does not make you smart. All different qualities. But as far as wanting to learn as much as you can, looking at the vortexes, looking at how rocks grow, looking how trees, how everything manifests, you can't really look at how it all works and the beauty of it without seeing the creator and seeing goodness and falling in love.
That's what I come to.
I guess some people can separate it. I don't know how you that's when it gets scary. That's when it gets scary, is when you can set I think that right there is where true ethics come in.
And honesty, and a certain kind of, I think, intellectual honesty, because again, that's what I kind of got to before, is the value to me in studying this stuff is not only to satisfy my own curiosity, but because the beauty of it always leads me to better, to have a more appreciation for our Creator, right? Because the beauty of this and the I don't know, majesty, is that a weird word?
Majesty is correct, and magic and beautiful. I mean, not in a negative way. Majesty, perfection.
Yeah.
The beauty of the perfection.
Exactly. And so this is the stuff I love, and I want more of it. I like it. I love it. I want some more of it.
We're going to be sending it to you in all spectrums. It carries all spectrums. It's the basis of everything. And if you want to know how the world works, it works by frequency, by vibration, by everything you touch and feel.
That manifestation.
They will be. Yeah.
Here's an interesting, just something interesting that I observed in the last week in doing the Freaky Freaks stream on Rockfin using these tuning forks, is I've got a variety of them, and one complete set of the chakra points. I call that the chakratic method, and then the other ones, the other full set is the solfeggios. And one of the interesting things that I found is, even though the chakra ones are in some ways much better constructed, and they have weights on them and everything to make them really sing out, the solfeggio frequencies, I can keep those things, if I focus my intention on them, I can keep them going almost indefinitely. And that's kind of weird.
I like your I like your pronunciation of solfeggio better. I always pronounced it solfeggio, but I'm thinking that's not right.
I don't know for sure. I suppose it depends, but I chose that linguistic form.
Yeah.
I think it's
No, I
probably
like it.
anyway. But if I demonstrate that, right, this is one of them. 285 hertz, and I can get this thing going if I focus my attention on it. I can get this thing going almost. All I've done is move it kind of closer to the microphone. I haven't struck
That's
it.
285?
Yep, 285.
Frequency?
Yep, and I haven't touched it again, and I'm just holding it.
What note is that, 285? Or is it?
I think it would. I don't know, dude. I'm on RSO right now. Don't get me trying to do
Is that
that.
a C?
I think it's a B flat. But I don't know. And somebody will catch me and go, "You're dumb." I'm like, I'm high.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, whatever. But anyway, I'm still holding this thing. I haven't struck it again. And if I focus on it, I can actually almost increase the energy by focusing on it. Hang on.
Yeah, this is the healing frequency, 285. Shit.
Still going.
Okay, I was going to say I lost you for a minute. Okay.
No, it's still going.
Yeah. Well, I think your Vox is kind of kicking in and out.
Yeah, it's Skype is probably doing that. So I'm listening to a hardware connection, so I can hear it go tail off forever, and I can still feel it. But yeah, that thing I can keep it going almost forever. Which again, the other ones don't. They drop off pretty dramatically, and I think that says something about the tuning of the solfeggio as it relates to the natural world around us. I guess that's the point I'm getting to. Is I think that it does have a natural resonance with the world around us, and in a way that, for example, 440 would not, or other frequencies would not. And so I just found that really interesting, that those in particular seem to be even of a somewhat lesser quality of construction than are the chakra ones, and yet they hold energy better. It's interesting.
That's interesting. I'm reading about 285 hertz, and it says, this tone is useful when treating wounds, cuts, burns, or any other form of damaged tissue. 285 hertz solfeggio frequency is said to be directly connected to our body's mind and soul's blueprint for optimal health and physical well-being due to its amazing ability to remember what should be and to return cells to its original form. It influences energy fields, sending them the message to restructure a damaged organ. 285 hertz is about remembering and healing your internal organs, and your energy. Very cool.
Yeah, very cool.
So when I put 285 into a frequency to musical note converter, was I supposed to put it in 285 or 28.5?
No, 285. I mean, 28.5 would come out. It would be it'd just be octaves down, right? It would be octaves below.
Perfect. So it says C pound 4 plus 48 cents.
Oh, so okay, C sharp.
C sharp.
Yeah, C sharp 4 plus 48 cents, a little high. So, but here's the thing. I think
they have us out of time. Yeah, they have us out of Hexstar music.
But if they
that's the spell.
That's on the 440 hertz arrangement. So if you modulated that, which is about 38 cents down, actually, it's about 37 cents down, then you would get a C, right? So I give it back to Zach. He got it right. It was a C. That note is a C. That's 285, I think. In fact, I can just double check that. Let me find that particular one again.
And 285 heals tissues and organs.
Yeah, it just felt like the first chord to Can't Always Get What You Want. But I heard.
No, it's C sharp. It is C sharp plus a couple of cents. They weren't wrong. It's C sharp plus a couple of cents. So even with the retuning, because tuning it down is only 37 cents, something like that, 432 versus 440. So it's not a lot. It's not a whole lot. But
it's not going to have a specific note on the diatonic. Obviously, it's different,
yep,
right?
Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, so with that, kids, kind of coming in for a landing, I think. So we can kind of move on. But again, if you missed it earlier, Bob announced that I have been asked to join the Globebusters team, about which I'm super excited. So look for that coming soon. And I couldn't be more thrilled to be joining the team and seeing if we could discover the secrets of the universe. I think that's
absolutely
awesome.
We're excited and can't wait to have you.
Yeah, me too. And again, I want to thank Cami Knodel, Bob's lovely bride, and a great friend of mine. Cami, thank you so much for joining us today. Always a delight to talk to you.
Oh, thank you for having me on. I always love talking with you.
Yep, me too. And Zach, my friend, I can't wait to give you a big hug again, my friend, soon enough, hopefully.
Are you planning on being here for Flattoberfest, maybe?
I am planning on being at Flattoberfest no matter what. Ideally, I will be there before Flattoberfest with a trailer.
That's what we want to hear. That's what we want to hear.
Ideally. So it's odd. Again, here's with those little nudges. The last few weeks I've been getting, again, pretty strong nudges that, if possible, I should put everything I have into trying to get out of here before winter. And like in those very words. And I got an email overnight from a friend of mine, said, hey, I just kind of was out taking a walk and just felt like I should tell you, if you can, you should try to get out of there before winter. All right. Well, nothing to see here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, those are eye openers right there.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I mean, it's not, that's not a new idea to me, but it is. Again, it'll wake you up. It certainly doesn't. I don't ignore them. You don't have to hit me over the head with a brick more than twice. Yeah.
They weren't letting me sleep at night when they came, and I did. I moved, and I have not been anything but grateful for the move when we did. So I wish you the experience we had, which was pretty nice for a moving experience overall, I think.
Except for the flat tire on the highway. That's
except for, well, you have to have a little bit of rain in your garden. And when you consider that you sold your house on the first day you listed it, you bought a house on the first day that you did that, you had a bed and breakfast dressed, I mean, things laid out for you pretty good.
Yeah.
So you can pick the flat tire, you can pick the rain, but it was pretty much a rose garden as far as cross country moves can be involved after living in the same house for over 20 years. So, I mean, that combination was
from what I gathered, that again, as I watched it happen, for what you guys did, from again what I watched, which was just a leap of faith, really, said okay,
a complete leap of faith.
You just said okay, took the dartboard and said okay, this is where we're going, and you did that as a looks like. Why is it buffering?
As a family.
Yeah, it looks like
it's okay on the stream.
Oh, okay. It said for a minute that it was getting no data, even though OBS was pushing it out. But anyway, you guys did this, and it just turned out exactly the way it was supposed to, as confirmation, just a complete clean confirmation that was what you're supposed to do. Again, without those little extra bits, and I have noted that it is often again those poop in your life that becomes fertilizer for growth. Right? you gotta have that crap, to go through. It gives you a little fertilizer.
Exactly. We were being guided from somewhere for sure. I mean, things were just happening, doors were opening, and you can't ignore stuff like that. And other
doors were closing. I mean, things were happening all around.
Yeah.
And for the first 6 months, hell, I still do it. I'm like, what the hell are we doing in South Carolina?
Well, and that's for
I
got to be honest. For me, I got nudged to get out of Seattle before I had any direction. I was like, I'm open to anything. And this is kind of, more and more the idea developed of kind of, the puppy cult and what I say that just half jokingly, but getting together with like-minded people to try to do a communal living situation and make the best of it as best we're able. And I don't know why, but that's where I feel the most strongly nudged to go. So that's where I think we've landed is, and I don't have a place to go. I don't even know what that looks like other than I feel like Dad's nudging to go. And so again, we've, since the first of the year began moving in that direction in earnest. and even to the point now we have a storage facility, and we're trying to go through our stuff and get rid of everything that doesn't have to absolutely come with us, so we can be move as small as we can and just kind of start over there. So that's our plan anyway. So we'll see. And the community of people again has been remarkable. The people who have responded to being like-minded, amazing people that I'm getting to know over time. Because I think again, when I first looked at this idea, right, and where and how, it became immediately apparent that with even in the perfect spot, the wrong people, it's going to be a failure. But with the right people, you can succeed no matter what the challenges are. And so that became of the primacy importance, is to find the right people. And I think that we're on the right path with that. So anyway, fingers crossed, and
Yep.
that sort of stuff.
I do have to take due note that my leap of faith was a lot easier, even with the family and that. And again, we took a leap not knowing anywhere to land, we didn't know what state we were going to move into, and we were looking at houses in multiple states. But it was kind of nice to know that if things went really bad, we'd crash at Karen's.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to have friends. You have a lot of friends in the South Carolina community, Baldini, and
Well, I have a lot of friends.
and
That's
it's
for
really
sure.
good to know. And in North Carolina,
Yeah, the Carolinas, period.
in the Carolina, and actually everywhere.
Well, and
We have a lot
I've
of
been,
friends everywhere, and so
and I've been open to, and I told Mrs. Baldini too that I was open to, as I kind of looked and felt where I was kind of drawn is like that little Four Corners area, Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina corner right there. That anything would probably be acceptable there, but it felt like upstate South Carolina was probably the landing zone, somewhere in there. But again, I feel like I'll know it when I get there, right? It'll just that vibe. And this is one of the things that I come back to with this whole idea of frequency is what I observe in nature is that those of us on the same frequency and vibration are drawn to one another, and then those who are of a different frequency are increasingly we run afoul of them. And we're running afoul of each other. They're sticking together, and we're becoming increasingly antagonistic toward one another, whether we want to or not. That polarity is becoming more and more clearly defined. And so we'll, again, talk more about that. But that's a topic for another conversation I'm sure we'll get to. But as it sits right now, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's, you guys are right where we're going to land. And there's no place I'd rather be than near friends, so that makes sense.
Beautiful. Well,
All right.
we're just can hardly wait till you get down here. I think you'll love it. And I agree. Seattle is not the place you want to be right now. I don't think any big city is.
Well, and again, even like Ceiling Fan Man, right, is close in this area. He's not in Seattle, but he's nearby. And, I think he was kind of disappointed that I didn't, strike out on, where he's at. And I'm like, dude, I love you. And if I was nudged to go there, I would be there already because it's close, it's easy. But I feel like this is going to happen in many different areas, right? Different people are striking out in different places, and I think we're going to see a number of these things of like-minded people getting together and trying to make a go of it and helping each other out when the poop does eventually, hit the fan. Maybe not the ceiling fan, but we'll see.
There is something to ask Bob about the shopping experience. Isn't that what he ran into yesterday? We ran into a lot of flat earthers in this area that have no idea even that flat earth is on YouTube.
Interesting. I'm running into more and more like-minded people, so it does seem to be that that polarity is certainly happening.
Yep. Yeah, I ran into a lady yesterday at the grocery store, and I was talking to the clerk there who is a flat earther, and I was just telling him, it's like, yeah, it looks like everybody is all up in arms about, the thing we can't talk about and yada, yada. And she immediately started piping in, and then I asked her when we got out in the parking lot, and I'm like, okay, well, you seem like you're pretty awake. I said, do you know what shape the earth is? She goes, the earth is flat.
Right on.
And she took that strictly from a biblical viewpoint, and she was 100% on it.
Right on it. That's awesome. That is awesome. Well, certainly, again, I have noticed an increasing number of people, such that it warms the cockles of my heart to see more and more people at least beginning to to ask the right questions, right? Even if they haven't come to the same answers, they're asking the right questions, and that's a great start. Because I think, again, if you have the temerity and the intellectual honesty to follow truth wherever it goes, the truth is what it is. And so, asking the right questions is a great start. All right, guys. I just want to say thanks again to all of our panelists that joined us this morning, and Bob as well for jumping in at the last minute. Love having you here. Zach, Cami, great having you with us this morning as well.
All right, great to be here. Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much. All right, we'll say goodbye to our friends there and say goodbye to you. I also wanted to say again, as I said at the outset, just the best group of people that you guys are here every week. Melanie and Todd and David Reif and Lungs and God, you guys are amazing. And I had the opportunity to again interact with people and help them out this week where I can. So. The offer is always open. I think I have reached the kind of the limit of the funds that were provided for Sue and some others to help them out, and then a little bit more. So, not complaining about that. But if there's always people who I just get kind of again the nudge that they could use the help, and I have yet to have pretty much anybody ask me for money, and. That's just not how it is. But people ask how they can help, and it's part of the relationship. When we get in a relationship with each other, and you know how somebody's doing, and sometimes you know that that's the answer, and sometimes it's not the answer. Right? Most of the time, I just talk to people or pray with them or for them. That's usually quite enough. But sometimes it needs a little bit more. And so if you want to contribute to that, you know how to do that, I hope. It should be all in the links there. PayPal, Venmo is available. You can send me email. We can do all that stuff. But again, I'm super delighted. I couldn't be more excited that we're able to take care of our own people in the community that could use a little help. It just takes a little nudge from time to time to really help people out. And I fucking love it, man. I love you guys. You're amazing. Some beautiful gifts I got this week. Thank you so much, Melanie. That was awesome. We love it. Some organite pyramids that she handmade with love, and divvied those up. And again, David, beautiful. We were again admiring your handiwork this morning, and just the touching, the care and thoughtfulness with which you guys. Approach our relationship. It's beautiful, and I know I'm always missing people, Ronald Lee and Sue and everybody that reaches out, and I forget. I'm really bad about that. I keep meaning to. One of the things I'm worse about is saying, "Hey, if you're gonna have a meetup, let me know," and people let me know, and I forget to mention it. I feel so bad. I'm like, oh, I didn't mean to blow you off. I just spaced it. Because doing, live presentations, there's always something going on, and there's usually something going wrong, and so you're scrambling to fix that as well. Anyway, so bear with us, and we're all trying to help each other out. But I sure do freaking love you guys, and I sure do appreciate every one of you for your words of encouragement during this weird medical stuff, and hopefully we'll know more Tuesday. But I do, again, last weekend was miserable. Early part of the week was really pretty rough. And then this last couple of days have been, man, you guys are holding me up in prayer, and I can tell, and I'm super appreciative. Hasn't been nearly so bad. So hanging on to that, and I just want to again thank you guys so much for being here, being a part of this, and as we try to figure out the world and figure out each other and how to express love, speaking truth and love to one another, and being shining lights in this world of darkness, right? And it just, I love it. It naturally shines through us, and we're the conduit. We're the media through which the light shines into this world of darkness. So you guys are it, man. All right, I'll leave you with a little music as I do. Most people don't think it be like it is, but it do. All right, here's a little bit of this, more than I've ever seen. Gosh, something like 1992, 3, something like that. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, you guys are the best. I love you guys so much, and hope to see you here tomorrow morning for Ancient Wisdom for a Modern World. That comes up at 7 o'clock on the West Coast, and Sola Scriptura. I don't know. We'll figure it out tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. You guys, again, love you so much. Thanks so much for being here. It's always a pleasure to spend my time with you. Hopefully soon enough, we'll be able to do it full time and put all my effort into this. Coming soon, hopefully. Probably after being sick, the boss isn't so happy with me these days. So work itself out, I guess. Anyway, more than I've ever seen. That's what today's program kind of reminded me of. This stuff is fabulous. Love you, Cami. Love you, Zach. Bob, you guys are amazing. Love you, my poppy peepers. You're the best. Dawn, I'll talk to you in a minute. Hang on. My body is weary, but the hunger will not subside. The flame in my heart is dying, but the fire still burns inside. For the light that I cannot hide. I walk on the edge of time, ride the winds of destiny. I hear the thunders coming, bringing me to my knees, like nothing I've ever seen. In my mind, I hear the voices calling. In my mind, I see the planets collide. In my mind, I feel the end beginning. It's like waking up from a dream. It's more than I've ever seen. Shadows fall like angels' tears, leaves darkness on every